Revenge by my dad on the man who harassed his sister. I lost my dad 20 days ago. The hurt is fresh. Not sure of the legality, but since dad is gone, I guess this story can't harm anyone anymore. My dad was my hero in more ways than one. He was a wonderful storyteller, and there's so many stories about him. Here is one that is my personal favourite. My dad is the youngest of 9 siblings. He had 6 brothers and 2 sisters. He loved his siblings, and as the youngest, he was loved and pampered. One thing that me and him share is our short temper. As a young man, my dad was known to be volatile. When he was 19, his second older sis, let's call her C, was married to a military man. He was mostly posted on the border. We are Indians. This meant my auntie C was living with her in-laws like many women in India still do. The problem was her older brother-in-law. Let's call him A for a-hole. A was a goon, an extortionist, an abuser, and yes, a rapist. He was scary. He was known for being physically imposing at 6'8", well built, and was unbeatable in fights. No woman was safe when he was around. After my Aunt C got married to her husband, the nasty brother-in-law A set his sight on her. He began by harassing her and forcing her to sleep with him. The family did nothing to protect her. This went on for weeks. She was tired of fighting and was totally shattered emotionally. One day, she found the courage to talk about it to one of her older nephews, who was 18 at the time. He went home to my dad and broke down about how C was suffering and how her honour and life is at risk. This enraged my dad, but he realised that he wouldn't be able to take down the monster that is A all by himself. He gathered his friends, his older nephews, and together hatched a plan. Actually, they had no plan. The plan was to beat the crap out of A to send a message. But they wouldn't be able to do this when he was sober, so they waited for the evening when he was usually drunk. My dad and his friends drank as well, for liquid courage. They then waited for him in the dark roads of their village, which still had sketchy electricity. Then they pounced on him, as soon as they had the chance. It was 6 young drunk fools against this one mountain of a guy. While drunk, he was still able to fight well. A also had a bunch of minions who, unknown to my dad, were right behind him. It became a free-for-all fight. My dad, drunk and in the frenzy of the fight, grabbed a piece of wood he found on the road and hit A with all his might straight in the head. And then my dad and his friends ran off because someone had called for backup and these guys weren't sober enough to come back with a plan or a sane idea. Dad somehow made it home, showered and slept. The next day he told his mum they got into a fight and crap went down. As he was telling his mum what happened, Dad was informed by his brother that the cops were looking for him. Grandma told Dad to lay low for a bit. Unfortunately, A made it to the hospital and was able to give a statement. Dad was on the run for a bit, but later surrendered because, according to him, I was tired of eating crappy food. They honest to God surrendered to the cops and demanded a good meal. The case was dismissed, and A did manage to live, but did not survive long. The injury my dad gave him chased him to the grave in a few months. This story is something my dad always liked to tell. He has zero remorse for what happened to A, because in his words, not a single woman was harmed or abused in their village after this incident. I miss my dad. I'm sure he had more such stories, but I'll never know them. I'm glad the case was dismissed. The amount of crime this one act of drunken violence stopped should be recognised. He's essentially doing their job for them. I'm unable to disprove of the murder of an abusive rapist. Perhaps it's a character flaw, but it's one I can live with. Threaten my friend with revenge porn. I'll ruin your whole damn life. My very good friend made some slightly dumb mistakes and sent some pictures to someone that she reasonably thought she could trust, but not knowing much more than his first name, his screen name, and roughly where he lived and the type of work he did. He's not in our country, but had indicated that he would be travelling for work to near us shortly, and they'd made some plans to meet. And when she got some red flags and backed out, the dude threatened to publish these pictures online. I am, incidentally, an attorney. So some searching later, and gathering up any pictures that he sent her of him that could possibly identify him, his online handle led me to a TikTok page, which led me to an Instagram page with his name on it. That led to a LinkedIn page with his place of work that matched a picture he sent with a branded polo he was wearing. Some more searches got me the email of the CEO, the VP of HR, operations manager, and the public relations manager. I just fired off an email on behalf of my client with the screenshots of him threatening revenge porn. That included snippets of the conversation showing his username while he sent that exact picture of him wearing his company's branded apparel. Also, links to how I know it's him, including pictures he sent her of his motorbike with the license plate showing. As further proof it's him, I included some screenshots of him discussing a workplace incident that was timestamped, along with pieces of dialogue discussing how he had sex with an ex at his place of work, and discussing plans to have sex with her in his office as well. I also included a picture he sent her showing his work laptop with his entire Outlook calendar, along with other pictures he took of his workplace with non-consenting employees. Wow, revenge porn aside, this guy doesn't stand a chance. I further informed his employer that I will be forwarding all this information to the local law enforcement, and since he had indicated that he would be travelling to the US soon, I will also forward this to the local office of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, as, since my client is a US citizen on US soil, these threats constituted as a federal crime. So, should they continue with his employment, and continue with their plans to send him to the United States for work, I will ensure, on behalf of my client, that federal law enforcement is waiting for him on arrival. Which I will do, as one of the assistant US attorneys for this region is a law school buddy of mine. Since I have his license plate number, I know where he lives and will be contacting his local authorities tomorrow. You dumb motherfucker, thinking you were hiding around anonymity and thinking you could threaten my friend. It took me 45 minutes to destroy your life. Talk about covering all bases. Even if they decide they can deny all the proof that it was their employee's screen name, polo shirt, motorbike, etc., they have to fire him for leaking company information and pictures of non-consenting staff, for their own sake. And there is an update about 12 hours later where, surprise surprise, they fired him. Good job OP. This next one looks like a pretty long post, but very worth it, so buckle in. My fiancé cheated with several men, including a sex offender, so I took my revenge. I met my ex in 2012, right after I'd just turned 30. I'd only dated and been with women exclusively until I came out as bisexual at 28. Let's just say the year I was 29 was a busy year making up for what I missed out on. It was mostly casual hookups, yes, safe, and I did try dating 2 different guys for a few weeks, but it just never worked out or got serious. I kind of figured that I'd probably end up marrying a woman, or not getting married at all because I just didn't see myself catching romantic and sexual feelings for a guy. Then I met Ryan. From the first date, it was just like the only time in my life that I'd fallen in love. Butterflies, constantly thinking about him, wanting to spend every moment with him. He fell for me hard too, and we became an item. Though he did say, while he considered my bisexuality a turn-on because he had a thing for straight guys, it also gave him pause because of my desires for the opposite sex, and his concern it may lead me astray. I thought about it and understood it was a legitimate worry, but assured him that I couldn't even think about anyone else because I was really into him. No, I knew he was the one by the end of the first month and I was in love, but I wasn't going to say these things too soon and risk scaring him off. On our first date, he admitted to me that he was legally blind due to a genetic disorder and that it was progressive and eventually he would only have a sliver of his peripheral vision. He immediately said he understood if I didn't want to see him again because no other guy had wanted to date him and be his driver all the time. I grew up with a brother in a wheelchair who never learned how to talk or walk due to misdiagnosed meningitis at 6 months old back in the 70s. I told him that and said that what my brother had was a severe disability, so in my perspective, his blindness had no effect in my feelings and that always being the driver was a small sacrifice just to be with him. The following years were bliss. We brought out the best in each other. My family, who was surprised but very supportive when I came out, adored Ryan and treated him like family and said that I acted happier since we'd been together. When I met him, he was working part-time in retail and had done very poorly in high school because he lost a lot of his confidence as his vision deteriorated. I told him that one thing I did insist on was that he do something with his life because he had so much to offer and that I would help. He said that he'd wanted to be a teacher, but didn't think that someone with limited vision could teach. Nonsense. So I put him through community college for 2 years, then 2.5 years of local university, and finally the 1-year teaching certification program as required by California. I drove countless miles and paid hundreds in public transportation costs for him, never blinking an eye or complaining. We'd been together for 7.5 years and were engaged to be married in October by the time he was in his last semester of his teaching certification, which involved him student teaching at his former high school with his favourite teacher from his days in school. Then the pandemic hit and schools closed. Fortunately, he'd had enough hours in the classroom that he would still qualify to be certified after the governor issued a waiver via executive order. On the 3rd day of the stay-at-home order in March, my life crumbled when I innocently found out that he'd cheated on me with an ex, all because he handed his phone to me to show me something on Instagram. I accidentally fat-thumbed the back arrow when he gave it to me, taking me back to a list of all his messages. I looked and recognised the name of his ex, Johnny, as the second message dated a week ago. I clicked on it and my heart sank. Directions to my house, pictures, dirty talk, and reassuring Johnny not to worry about me because he had my location on my Find My Friends, just in case I came home from work. I immediately started screaming, demanding to know everything, and he admitted to having his ex over twice for sex, and that they didn't use protection. Johnny was also engaged to his girlfriend during this, adding another victim. Then he admitted to sleeping with his straight but curious, recently single cousin Tyler, twice, again no protection. And finally, he admitted to sleeping with a supposedly straight guy named Thomas that he and many of my cousins went to school with, who I told Ryan I really didn't like or want them talking to because I didn't trust him after what I'd read about him. Since they were never close friends, I didn't feel like this was a big sacrifice or that I was being too controlling. And I assumed that he knew why I and all my cousins felt that way, but didn't bother repeating it. The reason was, after high school at age 20, this guy was convicted of sexual assault and penetration with a foreign object against a 16-year-old girl and had gone to jail and required to register as a sex offender for life. Apparently, my ex was the only person in his graduating class that hadn't heard that news. All of this happened in my home while I was working. We spent the whole weekend crying, with me asking over and over why, and him repeatedly crying and saying he just didn't know and that he felt terrible. Oh my god. Well, not knowing that doesn't make cheating 6 times with 3 different people okay. Monday comes around and anger starts being as common as sadness, and I made a comment that said I was going to pull all the phone records going back the 3 years that AT&T kept them. Only when he heard that did he admit to one more guy. Some random named Frankie from the gay hookup app Grindr, who was the first guy he cheated with and continued to casually hook up with for nearly 2 years, with the last time being in February, the month before. He told me how it started. Get this, it was the day after his graduation with his BA in May 2018, and he was drunk from celebrating and wanted to have sex. I too had been celebrating with him and said I was too drunk to perform and said I'd make it up to him the next day, then passed out asleep on the couch. Apparently he was angry horny because he downloaded Grindr, chatted with this Frankie fellow, and arranged to have sex in his car in a church parking lot across the street from our condo, which happens to be across the street from a school. This fact is important later. All while I slept on the couch. All the times they hooked up after that was again in my condo while I was working or visiting a friend for the night up the coast. He used to love going, but started saying he couldn't occasionally because of homework and studying. I absolutely lost it. I told him to get in the car and I drove him to his family's house so he could tell them what he did so they understood why he was moving back into their house. While he was in their house, I was in the driveway on the phone with AT&T ordering the 3 years worth of detailed call and text logs. Then I made an appointment to be screened for STIs. I suspended his service until he could figure out how to pay for his own damn phone. Then I temporarily changed all his passwords on the social media accounts he cheated with, and to make sure he couldn't hide more evidence, so only I would have access to his cloud. We shared each other's passwords on his suggestion for years before. I also called the bank and issued a stop payment on his final tuition check that I had sent to the certification program the week before but hadn't hit the bank yet. Before deleting his social medias, except Facebook, I took screenshots of the entire Instagram conversation with Johnny, the ex, and mailed the conversation to his fiancé, who deserved to know she could need to see a doctor to get tested too. His family were very religious and had kicked him out of high school for 3 days when he tried to admit he was bi, and only took him back in when he took it back. Needless to say, she ended it, and he got kicked out. 1 down. My ex came back to the car and we went home. I took his house key and told him to say goodbye to our 3 pets and get packing. The entire time he packed, I studied those phone records to find out dates, times, and if there was anyone else he was leaving out. He answered every question I asked him, and it was then that I discovered that Thomas the sex offender and he had only had oral sex in my home, and that the actual sex was in the same parking lot he screwed the Frankie guy in. The wheels started turning, and the next day I walked over to the church and sure enough spotted a camera. I spoke to a secretary, a sweet old lady, at the church and informed them about a registered sex offender having sex in their lot, and that not only was it a violation of his parole and indecent exposure, but that he was not allowed to be that close to a school, and I provided the date. I was in luck. They had a digital 2-year loop system that started deleting day by day after it had been retained for 2 years. It was April 2020 and he first cheated with Frankie in May 2018, and the sex offender was in April 2019. I told them I was filing a police report and that probation would require a copy of it eventually. They said they would save a file and allowed me a thumb drive of both days to submit with my police report. Within a month, Thomas the sex offender was locked up again. 2 down. I also filed a police report against the Frankie guy. The police said it was a relatively minor infraction, but since it was across from a school playground and skate park, they would follow up, but there would be no jail time. I researched the hell out of Frankie and called him to confront him. He was smug and admitted to knowing about me the whole time. What he didn't know is that I had found out that he had a job that required a security clearance, and he had several judgments against him, and collection agencies had been looking for him. Best money I ever spent on a data collection site. I didn't know why they couldn't find him and just garnish his wages. But it ends up he was Hispanic and had 2 last names and was a junior, plus he frequently went by his middle name Francisco, Frankie for short. So he got lost in the paperwork confusion. I sent a letter to the collection agencies providing his employer and current location and contact information, and then sent a copy of the police report about misdemeanor indecent exposure, for which he pled guilty, and it was a fine with community service, not considered a sex crime. His wages did get garnished, but only for 2 paychecks because the misdemeanor was enough for him to lose his security clearance and get fired. 3 down. Then I contacted Ryan's family on his mother's side, pretending to be him from his Facebook account, making sure they knew he had f***ed his cousin Tyler. It spread through the family like wildfire, and soon Tyler was contacting me because he couldn't get a hold of Ryan to ask why he would expose what they did. I just laughed and said you shouldn't screw your cousins, especially when they're engaged and that he'd messed around in my house, so now it was my turn for payback. 4 down. Lastly, I had already stopped payment for my ex's tuition, but since he was so close to finishing, I was sure his family would bail him out and pay the university. Like I said, indecent exposure is usually a slap on the wrist type of misdemeanor. However, I remembered some of the paperwork he signed to be a mandated reporter that you could lose teaching certification for documented acts of moral turpitude. I sent a copy of both police reports from the parking lot with still shots from the security footage clearly showing Ryan's face to the school district he'd been student teaching in, and a copy to the Commission on Teacher Credentials. 5th and final down. Admittedly, I did all of this out of anger, but he shattered my sense of self-worth and made me incredibly bitter and untrusting after years of being generous and supporting him. Everywhere I looked in town, I thought of Ryan and the cheating. I felt a terrible energy in my condo knowing it all happened there. I stayed 9 months and watched all 5 of their lives self-destruct. Then sold my condo, making a nice profit, and relocated to the PNW to start over. One thing that is sad is I found out just recently that his ex, whose fiancé broke up with him, ended up committing suicide several months after I moved. It is too bad that his family was so close-minded to turn on their own son, but in the end, it's not my fault that he cheated on his fiancée by coming into my home at my fiancé's invitation to cheat. Suicide is never the answer to one's problems, and I hope the fiancé he cheated on doesn't blame herself and that only his family does, as they should. Oh my god, that was long. My mouth is dry as f***. I'm definitely leaving it there. But it was a great post. Thank you very much for listening. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. If you've made it this far, you've already helped me out loads, but if you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe. I very much appreciate it. I'll see you in the next one.